Madison Avenue, a luxury boutique where a single watch costs more than most people earn in a year. Diana Ashford, an elegant black woman, a respected art curator, walks in wearing a tailored blazer and pressed jeans. She's looking for a vintage Patek Philippe, a gift for an important client. She picks up the watch, examines it carefully, sets it back down on the counter. She walks to another display. Then, a hand slams down on the glass. "I need to check your bag." The manager, Derek Chambers, stands there with that smile. That condescending smile she's seen 1,000 times before. The store goes silent. Every eye turns toward them. "Where's the watch you were holding?" Diana's heart pounds, but her voice stays calm. "On the counter, where I left it. Empty your purse, now." In front of everyone, he forces this successful, dignified black woman to empty her belongings like a common thief. Wallet, phone, lipstick, keys. No watch. And Derek doesn't even apologize. Instead, he says the words that cut deeper than any accusation. "Perhaps this store is out of your price range." But then, the door opens. 3 men in dark suits walk in. And the man in the center, a Korean man in his 50s with traditional tattoos crawling up his neck, scans the room until his eyes find Diana. What happens next? What Derek Chambers never saw coming. Changed everything. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about karma, dignity, and hidden truths move you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Maison Elegance, casting geometric shadows across marble floors that had witnessed 1,000 transactions, but none quite like what was about to unfold. Diana Ashford pushed through the glass doors with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged anywhere she chose to be. Her black blazer was tailored perfectly, her jeans pressed with a crispness that spoke of attention to detail. She had no idea that within minutes, her composure would be tested in ways she thought she'd left behind years ago. Derek Chambers noticed her the moment she entered. From his position behind the main counter, his eyes tracked her movement with the practiced surveillance of someone who had learned to judge books by their covers and had never been corrected. He watched as other sales associates glided past Diana without offering assistance, their smiles reserved for the older white woman examining scarves near the entrance, for the young couple debating between cufflinks at the far end. This was not an accident. This was a system, functioning exactly as designed. Diana moved through the boutique with purpose. She was searching for something specific. A birthday gift for a client who appreciated vintage timepieces. Her eyes swept across the displays until they landed on it. A Patek Philippe from 1967, resting in a glass case like a small piece of captured time. The watch gleamed under the boutique lights, its face elegant and restrained. Perfect. She reached for it, lifting it carefully from its velvet cushion. The weight felt right in her palm. She turned it over, examining the craftsmanship, the intricate mechanics visible through the exhibition caseback. This was exactly what she needed. Diana set the watch back on the counter and walked toward the pen display, considering a complimentary gift. Derek's hand came down on the glass counter with a sound that cut through the gentle classical music playing overhead. The sharp crack made several customers turn their heads. "Excuse me, ma'am. I need to check your bag." Diana turned slowly, her expression shifting from surprise to careful neutrality. She had been here before, not in this exact boutique, not with this exact man, but in this exact moment that seemed to repeat itself across her lifetime with different faces, different locations, the same underlying current. "I'm sorry?" Her voice remained even, giving him a chance to reconsider, to step back from the edge he was approaching. "The watch you were holding. Where is it? The boutique fell into that particular kind of silence that only comes when strangers sense conflict and cannot look away. Diana felt the weight of every eye in the room. Derek felt something else entirely. The certainty of his own authority, the righteousness of his suspicion. It's on the counter, Diana said, her words measured. Where I left it. Derek's smile was the kind that never reached the eyes. I'm sure it is. But I'm going to need you to empty your purse. Now. Are you accusing me of theft? I'm following store security protocol. There it was, the magic word. Protocol. As if racism could be sanitized by procedure. As if discrimination became acceptable when dressed in the language of policy. Diana calculated her options. She could refuse, could demand to speak to a manager. Derek was the manager. She could walk out, but that would only confirm his suspicions in his mind, would give him a story to tell about the woman who ran when confronted. She could cause a scene, but she had learned long ago that Black women who made scenes were never given the benefit of righteous anger. So she opened her purse. Derek's hands moved through her belongings with an invasiveness that felt deliberately violating. Wallet, phone, lipstick, keys, a small notebook, breath mints, no watch. He straightened, and Diana waited for the apology that would never come. Thank you for your cooperation, Derek said, his tone suggesting she should be grateful. Perhaps this store is out of your price range. The words hung in the air like poison. Diana felt heat rising in her chest, but her face remained composed. She had survived worse than Derek Chambers. She had built a career despite men like Derek Chambers. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. But before she could respond, before she could decide whether to walk away with her dignity or stay and fight a battle she had fought too many times, the bell above the entrance chimed. 3 men in dark suits entered the boutique, and the air itself seemed to change pressure. The man in the center moved with the kind of presence that made people instinctively step aside. Park Jin-Woo was 52 years old, but he carried himself with the controlled power of someone half his age and twice as dangerous. His suit was impeccable, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes that caught the light. But it was his neck that drew the eye. Traditional Korean tattoos serpentined up from his collar, a tiger's face emerging just below his jawline. Hanja characters marking him as someone who had earned his position through methods polite society preferred not to acknowledge. His eyes swept the boutique with the efficiency of a man who assessed threats and exits as naturally as breathing. When his gaze found Diana, something in his expression softened, almost imperceptibly. He moved toward her with deliberate steps, his 2 associates flanking him at a respectful distance. Derek Chambers felt his mouth go dry. He recognized power when he saw it, even if he couldn't name its exact source. The tattoos told him enough. The way the other customers suddenly found their shoes fascinating told him more. Jin-Woo stopped in front of Diana and did something that seemed to belong to another century entirely. He took her hand and brought it to his lips, kissing it with old-world courtesy that made the gesture feel less like a greeting and more like a statement of respect. Diana, Jagia, he said, his English accented but perfect. Forgive my lateness. The meeting ran long. Diana understood immediately what he was doing. Her anger at Derek transformed into something else. Relief, perhaps, or the strange comfort of knowing she wasn't alone in this moment. Jin-Woo, your timing is impeccable. Jin-Woo's eyes moved to Derek, who had gone pale. The transformation was remarkable. Seconds ago, Derek had been the man in charge, the arbiter of who belonged and who didn't. Now he looked like a rabbit who had just noticed the hawk. Was there some kind of problem? Jin-Woo's voice was soft, almost gentle. This was somehow more terrifying than if he had shouted. Diana hesitated. She could destroy Derek with a single word. She could watch Jin-Woo dismantle him, professionally and perhaps literally. But Diana Ashford had not built her reputation by using other people's power to fight her battles, even when that power was offered freely. Just a misunderstanding, she said quietly. Jin-Woo kept his eyes on Derek. A misunderstanding. He tasted the word as if considering whether to accept it. And you are? Chambers. Derek Chambers. I'm the manager here. Derek's voice had lost all its earlier authority. Mr. Chambers. Jin-Woo took a single step forward. The boutique seemed to shrink around him. Let me educate you about respect. This woman, he gestured toward Diana without looking away from Derek, has more class in her smallest finger than this entire establishment. She came here to spend money. Significant money. And you treated her like a criminal. Derek's mouth opened and closed. I didn't know she was what? The question cracked through the air like a whip. Important? Connected? Should that matter? The silence that followed was absolute. Even the classical music seemed to have quieted, though that was impossible. Jin-Woo continued, his voice never rising above conversational volume. You see, Mr. Chambers, I own the building where you park your car. I know the landlord of the complex where you live. I know the men who supply this boutique's inventory. He tilted his head slightly, and somehow that small movement carried more menace than any threat. And now I know you. Derek was visibly shaking now. The other customers had stopped even pretending not to watch. One woman had her phone out, though whether she was recording or preparing to call for help was unclear. Diana touched Jin-Woo's arm gently. Jin-Woo, let it go. But Jin-Woo wasn't finished. He turned to address the entire boutique, his voice carrying to every corner. All of you witnessed what happened here. Remember it. Character cannot be purchased. Dignity is not for sale. He looked back at Derek one final time. You're going to want to update your resume, Mr. Chambers, and perhaps pray that our paths don't cross again. The cold air outside hit Diana like a baptism. She had held herself together inside the boutique, maintaining the composure that had become her armor over decades of similar confrontations. But now, standing on Madison Avenue, with the noise of traffic and humanity flowing around her, she felt the carefully constructed walls begin to crack. Jin-Woo stood beside her, lighting a cigarette with practiced ease. He didn't speak immediately, understanding that sometimes silence was the greatest gift one person could offer another. His two associates had positioned themselves at a discreet distance, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to provide privacy. You didn't have to do that, Diana said finally. Her voice carried gratitude she hadn't intended to reveal. Jin-Woo exhaled smoke toward the sky. Of course I did. My grandmother was treated like that when our family first came to America. She was an educated woman, a teacher in Seoul. But here, they saw only her accent, her foreign face. My mother, when she tried to find work outside Koreatown, was told repeatedly that positions had just been filled. They weren't filled. They just weren't available to her. He turned to look at Diana directly. This poison needs consequences. Diana smiled, but it was a smile that carried years of exhaustion. It's not the first time. It won't be the last. Perhaps not. Jin-Woo's jaw tightened. But it will be the last time he does it. Of that, I am certain." They began walking, no particular destination in mind. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent, painting the buildings in shades of amber and gold. New York City moved around them with its characteristic indifference to individual human dramas. "You still wanted that watch?" Jin-Woo asked after a moment. Diana laughed, and the sound was genuine. "Not from that place." "Good." Jin-Woo's face transformed with a rare smile, one that softened the hard edges carved by years of violence and survival. "I know a jeweler in Diamond District. Korean man, family business for 3 generations. We'll find something better. Something with a story that doesn't include that fool." They walked in comfortable silence for a block before Diana asked the question that had been forming in her mind. "Why do you do this? Defend people like me?" Jin-Woo stopped walking. He took a final drag from his cigarette and crushed it beneath his shoe. When he looked at her, his expression held something Diana hadn't expected to see: vulnerability. "Because power without principle is just tyranny." "My father taught me that, though he taught it through bad example rather than good." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "And because my son, she taught me that true strength isn't in how much fear you can generate, but in how you protect those who cannot protect themselves. Even though you could protect yourself, Diana, you shouldn't have to do it alone. No one should." His voice had caught on his wife's name, just for a moment, and Diana understood. She had heard the stories. Everyone in certain circles knew about Park Jin-Woo's wife, a woman who had supposedly civilized a monster, who had died too young and left him with principles that seemed at odds with his profession. "She must have been remarkable," Diana said softly. "She was. She saw good in me when no one else did. When she died..." Jin-Woo trailed off, then shook his head. "She made me promise to use my power for more than just accumulation. To remember that everyone deserves dignity. It's the only promise I've never broken." They resumed walking, and Diana felt something shift between them. This wasn't just a powerful man defending someone in his social circle. This was something deeper. A shared understanding of what it meant to be judged by surfaces, to carry invisible weights, to fight for dignity in a world that rationed it according to prejudice. "Thank you," Diana said. "Not just for today. For understanding why it matters." Jin-Woo nodded once, a gesture that somehow conveyed both acknowledgement and dismissal of thanks. "Tomorrow, we find you a better watch. Tonight, you rest. And Mr. Chambers?" His smile turned cold. "Mr. Chambers begins to understand what consequences feel like." 3 days passed like water finding its level. Diana returned to her work, curating an upcoming exhibition of contemporary African artists at a gallery in Chelsea. She buried herself in catalogs and authentication documents, in negotiations with collectors and insurance companies. But the incident at Maison Elegance lingered in her mind like smoke that wouldn't dissipate. On the 3rd morning, her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. "Have you seen this?" Followed by a link. Diana clicked it and found herself watching shaky cell phone footage of the boutique confrontation. The woman with the phone had indeed been recording. The video had been posted to social media and was spreading with the viral velocity that only genuine injustice could achieve. The comment section was a flood of outrage, support, and the inevitable arguments that such moments always generated. By noon, Maison Elegance had released a statement. They were deeply sorry for the unacceptable treatment of a valued customer and had implemented immediate changes to prevent such incidents in the future. The statement was carefully worded, passive voice deployed like a shield against accountability. But buried in the corporate language was a single concrete fact. Derek Chambers was no longer employed by the company. Diana felt no satisfaction in his termination. She had never wanted him destroyed, only educated. But she understood that some lessons could only be learned through loss, that some people needed to feel consequences before they could recognize their own cruelty. Her phone rang. Jin-Woo's name appeared on the screen. "Have you seen the news?" he asked without preamble. "I have." "Good. Are you free this afternoon? I have something for you." 2 hours later, Diana found herself in a small jewelry shop in the Diamond District, a place she would have walked past 100 times without noticing. The interior was modest but immaculate. Glass cases displaying pieces that ranged from elegant simplicity to breathtaking complexity. An elderly Korean man emerged from the back, his face creasing into a smile when he saw Jin-Woo. They spoke in rapid Korean, words Diana couldn't understand but whose warmth was unmistakable. Then the old man turned to her and bowed slightly. "Mrs. Ashford, it is my honor. Jin-Woo has told me what you need." He disappeared into the back and returned with a wooden box. Inside was a watch. Not the Patek Philippe she had originally wanted, but something even more special. A vintage Omega from 1968, its dial a deep blue that seemed to hold entire oceans. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, each detail speaking to an era when timepieces were built to last generations. "This belonged to my father," the jeweler explained. "He wore it when our family first opened this shop 43 years ago. He said it reminded him that time is the only thing we cannot buy back, so we must spend it honorably." He looked at Diana with knowing eyes. "Jin-Woo tells me your client appreciates such philosophy." Diana felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "It's perfect. How much?" Jin-Woo held up a hand. "Consider it a gift, from both of us, to someone who refused to surrender her dignity." Diana wanted to protest, but she understood this wasn't about money. This was about solidarity, about the invisible network of people who had faced discrimination and chose to lift each other rather than climb alone. That evening, Diana stood in her apartment, the watch resting in its box on her desk. She thought about Derek Chambers, wondering if he understood yet what he had lost. Not just his job, but the chance to see people as they actually were, rather than as his prejudices painted them. She thought about Jin-Woo, a man whose reputation was built on fear, but whose actions were guided by honor. She thought about the jeweler who had given away a family heirloom to make a point about dignity. And she thought about herself, about all the times she had walked away from confrontation, had chosen peace over justice, had protected others' comfort at the cost of her own. Perhaps this time had been different, not because of what Jin-Woo had done, but because she had finally allowed herself to accept help, to acknowledge that fighting alone was a choice, not a requirement. Sometimes justice didn't come from courtrooms or legislation. Sometimes it came from an old mafioso who still believed in honor, and a woman who refused to bow. If this story moved you, pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been judged by your appearance instead of your character? Have you ever witnessed someone being humiliated for simply existing in a space where others decided they didn't belong? And when power revealed itself in unexpected ways, did it restore your faith that dignity still matters? Share your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe in stories about justice, solidarity, and the power of standing together against prejudice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel